I thought it was going to be really easy, and I thought, oh, those 500 people are just going to subscribe, like easy peasy. They're my first 500, like job done. And it was so not like that. I started to get really affected by like, oh, I don't know what they want to see. I don't know whether to share mum stuff, because what if they're not mums? And I don't know whether to talk too much about my postpartum body because I don't want to offend anyone else's postpartum body. Like, I suddenly had all this noise that I don't think I'd ever had as loudly before. I feel like my identity had massively shifted, and I was suddenly navigating this in front of hundreds of thousands of people.
If you've outgrown just posting on social, but you aren't sure what the next version of your work or business should look like, you're in the right place. Welcome to Better Days. I'm your host, Daniel Kosmala, and today I'm joined by my guest, Emily Ricketts. Emily, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'd love it if you could just start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Of course. So my name is Emily, or Em. I'm a personal trainer based in the UK, and I am based predominantly on Instagram. I've built a following of nearly 500,000 and have also got various different fitness businesses within that as well, with ebooks, a membership site as well, and some one-on-one coaching thrown in there too.
I love that. And we got introduced, honestly, 6 months ago?
Yeah, 6 months, I'd say.
Yeah. And I think we'll dig a little bit more into that introduction and how we got connected a little bit later in the episode. But for right now, I'd love to talk like before you had the audience, before the money or revenue, before the business, who were you at the start of this journey?
To be totally honest, I was just your average girl on a journey to transform my body and mind, who was really done with fad diets, quick fixes, and kind of those short-term solutions that just don't yield long-term results. I probably did every fad you can think of and was constantly kind of at war with my body, never getting to where I wanted to be, very much in a toxic headspace. I'm not naturally fit. I was always the person that would skip PE at school. I would always fake sick notes. And for me, I think it was just about firstly changing that mindset. And I found strength training actually through my now husband, got me into strength training. And I just very quickly got addicted to how strong it made me feel, how empowered I felt in my body. I started to learn more about nutrition, and it all kind of just went from there. And one day I just decided I was actually going to just show up and share my journey online and just see what happened, see if anybody wanted to follow along. And I think I really related to maybe other people that were perhaps like me, thinking, I'm never going to be fit. I'm never going to look like that or feel like that because I'm just not naturally fit. I'm not naturally athletic. And I think that was what my kind of goal was, is even if I could like resonate, one person could resonate with my journey and get something out of it, that would be incredibly valuable. I'm now a mum of two. So over the last 3 years, I've got a 3.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. So that mindset has kind of transformed even more so now, getting to know a body postpartum that you do not even recognize, navigating like a rebuild that is far bigger than I think I ever understood until I lived and breathed it myself. And obviously now doing all of it, juggling hormones, sleepless nights, and kind of everything in between.
So when did you start building the audience online before you had your first child?
Yes. So I started, I want to say I'm pretty sure it was 2018 that I started. I was actually in an office job at the time.
What did you do?
I was a graphic designer. So I was working in a creative agency and loved my job, like really enjoyed it. I'd got a degree, I'd got a master's, I'd worked super hard to get to where I was and was loving it. And this was kind of almost like just this, it was never meant to be a business. It was literally just something I thought, I'm just going to share my journey. I was going through my own transformation. I was sharing it quite honestly. And it just started to kind of almost accidentally gain some traction. And it got to the point about a year later, I'd hit 100,000 followers, sorry, a year later. And I was like, I'm going to give this a go. I had no contracts to my name. I had no products. I had literally nothing except my PT certificate. Like that was it. And everybody thought I was crazy. I was leaving this job that I loved, that I'd worked super hard for. And I was like, do you know what? I've just got to give this a go. And I predominantly started working mostly with brands. So, working more so as a creator with brands and partnering with them and creating content with them, which I loved. But then that kind of spiraled then into actually creating products that could help people with guides and coaching and everything else. So, it was a complete accident, which honestly blows my mind when I look at what there is now and how many people follow now and all the bits and pieces that we've got going on work wise. But yeah, a very happy accident.
So was the content that got you from 0 to 100,000, was that all still based training stuff? Like what were you just kind of documenting your own journey, or were you specifically creating with something in mind?
I think what's probably hard when you talk about this stuff now, and I'm sure you can relate to this,
Right.
but the social media space has changed so drastically that if I did what I did then, it would never work, but it worked kind of at the time. And everything was so much more simple. You could show up, and I don't even think there were carousels when I first started. Like, you just literally posted, and it was one photo. It was very much like, what filter have you put on it? And captions were big. And I mostly just shared my transformation. Like, that's always something throughout my whole time on social media that has stood the test of time, is when I'm honest and I'm like, I've gone from this to this by doing things like this. That always resonates really well, because I think that's your proof point that
Mm.
you've been there, you've done that. And I think people watch those videos or see those photos and they think, that's me right there. Like, they can see that I wasn't somebody that was naturally tiny or anything like that. It's been a journey, and they kind of relate to that starting point. So that was probably the biggest thing that I think helped grow from a content perspective. Definitely at the beginning was sharing honestly before and afters transformations of my own, and also documenting workout examples. Here's a workout you can do, and that type of thing. Those were kind of my main, I would say, like, bread and butter things that I was sharing.
Got it. And in terms of the doubt that is inevitable in any kind of creator journey, especially when you're building an audience online, what doubts were the loudest, like in those early stages?
I think I almost really miss the M from like 2019, 2020 from a headspace perspective, because there's something that really shifts in your headspace when you're logging on to post and share and you see that many followers at the top of your page. It really makes you kind of think twice. Whereas I remember back in the day when I first started and I had 10,000 followers or less than that, I would just show up so consistently and so authentically, because I was like, no one's watching, like, no one cares. And I almost liked that because it was just my own documentation of stuff. So that mindset, I try really hard to kind of tap back into that now and almost
Mm.
ignore the numbers that are there and just focus on, I'm showing up, I'm sharing my journey, and just keeping showing up. That consistency has definitely helped.
How do you balance that mindset with the kind of tension or friction that comes from wanting to cater to the audience and give them what they want or what you feel like they're actually there for? Because while those two don't always have to be in conflict, it feels like there can be some tension at times.
I think I kind of, rightly or wrongly, I feel like I've always put what they want probably at the forefront of what I try and create, both with physical products, actual products I've created, like the membership site, we'll get into that, but very much born out of what they've asked me to do as an audience. But I think it sometimes is a bit disheartening when you ask, what do you want to see? Like, for me, food content is a great example of that. I regularly get asked about food content, share some recipes, share some what I eat in a days. And whenever I do, like, the content always tanks. And I'm always like, guys, you've asked for this. I am delivering what you asked. But I also think that part of being online for so many years now and part of building that following is not being deterred by a bad post, not being put off by something not going down well, trialing different things, not being afraid to kind of just continually show up and get things wrong. Like, it's not wrong just because it doesn't go down well. And I think especially now, so much of it is at the mercy of the algorithm, at the mercy of, like, it's so changing. Like, now, for example, carousels are really in. I remember probably 12 months ago, you would just be posting reels. Like it's always changing. And I think you can exhaust yourself quite quickly by constantly trying to chase what's trendy, but sticking to your journey and what you've got to say and how you can actually help them. Like I always ask myself that, like when I'm looking at what I've posted recently or what I want to post, I always think like, how can I help them? Like, how is this helping anybody? Because it's fine to post a picture of you looking great, but if you're not actually sharing how you actually do that or how you train or how you eat or how your mindset is, then you're not really helping anybody. You might inspire them visually, but helping I think has to be at the bottom of it all, because that's what keeps people coming back, giving them that free information, free workouts, free mindset tips, and just that honesty along the way.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. You mentioned like people asking for recipe stuff and then that content tanking. I've seen things like that before, even in my own personal experience, where like working at Uscreen and talking with customers, they're like, I need to see how people build landing pages. And then I'll share with them site reviews because I've done site reviews for probably, I don't know, hundreds of different businesses over the years where I look at their landing page and just walk through like, here's what works, here's what could probably use some love, that kind of thing. And I'll send them an example. I'm like, here's another one that's kind of a similar thing, and they'll watch it and be like, yeah, but this doesn't really apply to me for XXX reason. So those site reviews where people have been asking for them, then they wouldn't watch. They'd only watch it if I did it specifically for them for the specific thing that they asked for, which is crazy to me because it's just this it's kind of like a stuck mindset of like, oh, well, that won't work for me. It works for them, but not for me. And so you have run into that, but I also see then creators who they'll ask their audience, "Hey, what do you want?" and they'll go create what the audience says and it hits. What do you think is the difference between those two scenarios of like when they ask for things and it hits versus when it misses? Do you think that that is on something that's on the creator or on the audience?
I think it's probably on the creator, and like I can hold my hands up to that. I think it's probably what they want, but it's just not being delivered in the way they want to digest it and absorb it, or it's not in a way that kind of feels achievable. So for example, if it's, you know, they're asking for food content, for example, and I share a recipe and they think, oh, that looks great, but that's not actually what I want. It's then exploring, okay, do they want like 10-minute meals? Do they want family meals? Do they want actual, you know, nutritional breakdowns? Do they want education? Like they say, I need help with food. I want recipes and nutrition, but getting to the bottom of like, what do they actually want? Like, what does that actually translate as content? So that's what I mean when I say like trying different formats, like trying, you know, okay, try a carousel of some recipes, try what I eat a day, try, you know, 5 breakfasts as a series. Like trying different things, I think really helps you, because then you can see what sticks and then analyzing that data and being like, oh, they actually really like that. I'm going to double down on that. And I think that's probably what I do from a content perspective. Like when I said about transformations, like they always go down well, like a specific formula of like, I was like this, now I'm like this because I did this. Like that formula is really strong. And I think that applies to like lots of different sectors, not just fitness. So for me, it's then actually using that in different ways. So it's like, okay, I might do free workouts. I might do a free week of workouts. Like, how do I then like keep that format, but give it to them in different ways?
Yeah. Over this kind of 7 to 8 year journey of creating content on social media, like, is there anything you feel like you stopped doing that unlocked like a surprising amount of growth?
I think stopping caring what everyone thinks. Like, I know that sounds so cliche, but and it sounds almost backwards because you kind of are asking for what people think because you've got so many followers there that are giving you feedback all the time. But I definitely went through a season, particularly after I'd had my first baby, where probably hormones, I was feeling more sensitive. I feel like my identity had massively shifted and I was suddenly navigating this in front of hundreds of thousands of people. And I started to get really affected by like, oh, I don't know what they want to see. I don't know whether to share, you know, mum stuff because what if they're not mums? And I don't know whether to talk too much about my postpartum body because I don't want to offend anyone else's postpartum body. Like
Mm.
I suddenly had all this noise that I don't think I'd ever had as loudly before. And I think for me, it was like pushing against that and just trying to get back to like what was at the core of where I started. Like, how did I get from like A to this middle B point, and then how I then, because I think once I had my eldest, I was on about 200K. And then I jumped up loads in the space of like the next 12 to 18 months. I jumped up loads. And that was honestly, that shift happened from going back to my core of like, okay, I'm going to show up. I'm sharing my journey authentically. I'm not getting lost in this noise of what everyone wants to see or hear or what they think of me or what they think about what I'm sharing. I am sticking with what I know is right and just sharing me. So that definitely, that shift then really, I mean, over doubled what my following was.
Wow. So similar to that, you mentioned kind of the noise. Like, what do people think matters about growing on social that actually doesn't? Like, what are some common misconceptions from your experience where you're like, people think this, but actually that's just not true at all?
I think people care way too much about how many followers they've got, and what they need to think about more is how many actually engaged members of their audience they have, because you can have hundreds and hundreds of thousands, even millions of followers, and you can still not have an audience that's primed to buy from you or engage with anything that you share. So I think that for me is it. Like, people get so hung up on like, oh, I want to get to 100K, and it's like, what's going to happen at 100K? It's just more people, and if they're not the right people, it's not actually going to translate to anything.
What's gotten harder as your audience has gotten bigger?
I would say probably two things: continually coming up with new ideas or like new content or new ways to kind of talk about the same thing. Because, like I said right at the very beginning, I'm absolutely not about fads, quick fixes, or anything like that. So, there are only so many ways you can do a strength workout. Like, there are only so many really good upper body exercises, for example. Like, continually thinking of ways to create workouts that are going to be engaging when you're not then getting down the trap of doing things that look great or look interesting but which aren't actually going to be good from like a fundamental perspective of training. I think the second is, which I touched on before, just getting really in your own head about how many people there are there and caring a lot more about, oh, should I post that? There's a lot of people watching my story. What should I post next? And almost like that fear of showing up because it feels like there's a lot of people watching sometimes. Those two things I'd probably say.
Okay. And a quick note before we keep going, most people who watch this aren't subscribed or following. If these conversations help you think more clearly about your business, make sure you're subscribed to get new episodes every week. I'm now curious to move into this kind of the period of when you decided to monetize and maybe some of the fear around it. So, like, when did it start to dawn on you that you were ready to monetize, or what held you back from monetizing sooner?
I started creating guides as, I guess, a way. I think that was probably my first intentional move into creating something that was actually monetizing, besides brand deals and bits and pieces there, actually monetizing, I guess, me and my workouts and my work and my kind of signature style of training. I definitely think the context of the graphic design background helps see why ebooks for me felt like quite a comfortable fit. But also, if we rewind our minds back to like 2019, 2020, that was how most people were delivering like fitness guides. That was in that era of that's how you created them. So I think I was probably inspired by what other people were creating, and I could see, oh, okay, that's how they've done that. Why can't I do my workouts like that? Um, I was definitely propelled forward by them being super successful. And lockdown and COVID for me probably happened at a great time because it was at a time when everybody suddenly cared a lot about health and fitness. And it was very much at kind of the early stages of those guides being created. It gave me a lot of opportunity to try different formats. Like, I did follow along live sessions totally for free on my Instagram for months and months and months. I then like did more home guides. It probably pushed me more into home training, whereas I'd been more traditionally gym workouts. And it really opened up like another side of thinking for me. It got me to actually think, okay, with my dumbbells on my living room floor, how can I still get a good workout in? And the guides honestly have been such a hero part of my business side of this. I know that you know that obviously already from my own conversations, but they're definitely something that I've always felt quite passionate about as a really low entry option to get people into my world and actually paying me for that training. They've always resonated well, but they've always been a bit of a block in terms of people looking at them and going, okay, but how do I actually, their photos, for context, their photos of each exercise. I want to do it with you though. I want to do the workout with you. So how can we then do it with you? And then I guess that's how I then ended up chatting to you and joining with Uscreen, because I really wanted to try and see if I could capture what I've created, but make it even more accessible. I know how much of a barrier to entry exercise can sometimes be. I know how hard it can be to show up. And I think making things even easier, that you can literally just press play, like you do not have to download it, scroll through, like it's there. I'm there cheering you on, all of that stuff. I think has been obviously a big turning point again in the business.
For you, what changed mentally between I could sell something or I could leverage this online following to sell something and I'm ready to sell something and I'm comfortable, maybe the wrong word, but like I'm going to take this risk and go out there and put myself out there to start selling this.
I think when I think back to like the early guides, I don't think I felt masses of discomfort because they felt very low risk. I'd done the graphic design creation, I'd literally set up a Squarespace site and plonked them on there. Like there was no PR, there was no email marketing, it was just me, like, here's my guide if you want to download it. It was so chill in how it was actually approached. And I think that success of that spurred me on. I think the fear has come from this next stage of the business, which has been, the app and, the membership site and all of that stuff. That's really, I guess, where probably that fear has come in. And I think if I think back to what made me actually go, no, I'm doing this, it probably was driven by just really trying to give them what they wanted. Like I got asked all the time for these lockdown style workouts to come back again. I very much felt like with the guys that I was reaching the ceiling a little bit of how I could continue to motivate people to download them and engage with them. And I wanted to kind of feel like I was building more of a community, which I think you can only really do in this kind of style of format where they're able to kind of subscribe and be a part of something and join that group together.
So we got connected about 6 months ago in mid 2025 when you started with Uscreen, but I'm sure there's part of the journey before even the first conversation we had that I'm curious about. Like, what assumptions did you have about, I'm going to make this change if I sell online guides, PDFs, one-time sales to follow along subscription style workout platform? Like, what assumptions did you have about that transition that turned out to be wrong?
I thought it was going to be really easy. Like, I know we've talked about this personally. I honestly thought that it was a case of like looking at my data from the guides. And I had done in the June, we launched this in like August, September. In the June, I had done a video based program for the first time and I hosted it behind a paywall on my website. And that had done super well. And I thought, oh, those 500 people are just going to subscribe, like easy peasy. They're my first 500, like job done. And it was so not like that. And I think it was very humbling how different a landscape selling a physical ebook is to selling somebody into this world that you've created and all the complexities of kind of explaining how they navigate the system. How do you keep the content fresh? How do you keep them engaged? You suddenly then have a community to manage, like all of those bits and pieces. I think I just thought that the two would translate a bit better because it's still me doing the workouts, it's just a slightly different format. But I think what you're asking of them, and I know we've talked about this in terms of like somebody downloading a PDF is so low commitment versus somebody subscribing, even though the cost is actually the same. If they only did 1 month, is actually the same. So yeah, I think that's probably my biggest thing was like I thought it was going to be a lot more translatable, but it wasn't.
Well, and we've talked about this piece particularly where you've sold however many PDFs you've sold over the last 6 years, but the level of accountability or control you have of people actually making use of those once that sale is done is kind of out of your hands, right? Like a one-time product, it's just like they get what they asked for, you get what you asked for, you wipe your hands, and you're like, all right, on to the next thing. And they're most cases, or in a lot of cases, going to do the same thing. Like the accountability factor is almost non-existent. Whereas a subscription, you have that every month because people are paying a recurring fee every month, and they're accountable to, I'm either using this to get results or to get the outcome that I anticipated when I signed up, or I should probably cancel,
Yeah.
which is quite a different experience
Yeah.
both for you and them.
Yeah, definitely. I think I just was not used to seeing that data. Like exactly like you said, I was used to people buying the guide, and I know that I said this to you that I'm sure there were people that bought those guides that thought, oh, this isn't for me, or like this isn't what I expected, or I'm not going to do this, and just it just dies in their inbox. I was blissfully ignorant to that and just thought it's fine. Like it's all they paid me. It's great. They've got the guide, and I think suddenly with the app and the membership, you're then thrown into actually having to face this data. You are seeing who unsubscribes. You're not just seeing the sales, you're seeing who unsubscribes, you're seeing why they unsubscribe. And I remember one of the things you said to me really early on was like, it's not that deep. Like I was getting so hung up on every unsubscribe. I'd be like, they said they don't like the content in there. They said it's too expensive. Maybe I should change the price. Maybe the content's not good enough. And you were like, it's not that deep. Like it could be anything. Like because I would get people sometimes like subscribe and then unsubscribe straight away. And I'd be like, what have I done wrong? Like it felt so personal. So I definitely think over the last kind of 6 months, that skin of mine has got a bit thicker, but also my understanding of that, like it's all just data and it's all then helpful to look at, and that it is a totally different landscape. And we've talked about churn rate and all of that stuff and how normal that is, which is something I didn't even know existed. So yeah, it's definitely been a steep learning curve.
Yeah, and some of that data you can't read into it beyond the surface level, because how often are, if you think about your own experiences, when you get an exit survey or like a cancellation survey or something like that, most experiences you just are clicking a button like, get, I just want to be done. I've already mentally committed to this. I'm done. Let me free. Set me free of this. And so you're just clicking a button. And so I often don't even look for like the button that's going to tell the truth. I'm just like, most, what's the closest to maybe not being a lie? Or I just click a button and move on. And so when you get that data, it may not be as deep as you think it is. And that's where it's like surveying your actual churned audience after the fact and incentivizing them to do that, I think is in many cases much more effective than like a cancellation survey right at the point of cancellation, because most cases people are just like, come on, let me go. Um, I'm curious for you, it wasn't this transition for you from guides to subscription revenue and figuring out this whole new world has not necessarily been what I would call like a smooth transition from your perspective. So I'm curious, from where you stand, like, was there a specific moment where you started to feel like a sense of relief from the tension of that transition?
I think the more the subscribers have grown, the more my confidence has then grown as well. I did quite a few good promos around Black Friday and then January, because obviously they're big markets, like January in particular for fitness. And I think making that decision to actually do a discount that made it very, very accessible to boost more people in, on the premise that I was actually also doing that for me, because seeing more people in there, more people doing the workouts, more comments under the videos, like that was so valuable, way more valuable than me, not doing a promo and having less people, but potentially more revenue. Like, I think that for me was definitely a big boost. I think obviously all of the support that I've had from you, I know I'm so annoying, but all of the support from you has been really, really helpful. And just learning new things like, email sequences, onboarding flows, like all of that stuff, like it's just not something I've ever had to do. Like the workouts, I guess, have always just sold themselves, I guess, kind of naively, like with the guides. And this is just such a different ball game. And there's still so much that I want to do and so much that I feel like I can do. Like I know we've talked about, different membership models and how different people package things, quarterly memberships, 6 month memberships, like all of that stuff I feel like is such untapped territory at the moment. I think as well, like one of the things that is almost hard is like I remember some of my very early calls and being very inspired by what other people do, but equally very aware now that it's not just a case of you doing what they do because that works for them and their audience, and that every audience is different. I think that's a very big learning curve as well.
I'm curious, as someone who it's probably still pretty fresh for you, like the experience of selling a one-time purchase versus now the transition you've gone through over the last 6 months of like learning how to feel comfortable and confident selling a recurring subscription, getting people on board for that. What do you feel like are the biggest differences between how you sell those two things?
I think you have to communicate a lot more explicitly how much value they're getting from that subscription. I think for them, it feels like a much bigger commitment, and you have to convince them that that commitment is worth it. I have trialed having a free trial on and I chose to switch it off because for me personally, I was feeling like the people that were then coming into the trial weren't necessarily converting that well and actually setting up kind of my own version of a free trial, which allowed more control of what content they saw. So it's a prescribed 7 day trial they have access to of seven workouts, seven recipes, one or two mindset videos from me in there as well. It's a lot easier to guide them through a really good, strong week instead of just giving them access and then letting them kind of figure things out. I feel like for me, that's probably worked a bit better. Um, gosh, so much, just so much.
Particularly on social, do you feel like there's a different way that you talk when it comes to like doing a push for membership to call to like getting those call to actions to go subscribe? Do you feel like there's a big difference in how you talk about it versus how you talked about selling, like a one-time guide?
I think from my experience, it takes people longer to make a decision. I
Hmm.
think I was used to like if I put a promo up for the guides, I would see hundreds of sales. It felt like, oh great, they'll just do it straight away. Whereas this was like I remember when I first put the Black Friday code live and I was like, there's not very many people. Like, what is going on? Like, but it then built over the course of like the week that that was live, it built loads. I feel like it takes longer to convince people and they just have to you have to earn their trust a bit more. Whereas the guide, I think the ebooks, people just think, oh, if it's rubbish, it doesn't matter. Like, it's only a tenner or it's only 20 quid, even though monetary wise, it's the same as their month with the app. It just feels like that barrier of a paywall and a subscription, even though they can cancel it, is really different. I know as well, like we've talked about things like many chat prompts and stuff like
Mm.
that. With the guides, I found they worked really well. I would do things like a free PDF that would do really good within ManyChat, and trying to then kind of duplicate that with this just doesn't work. Like, because the only way for me it's worked well is by removing the paywall completely and just having the video like as completely free. If you have the barrier of card details and the barrier of um you know a subscription there, even if it's free for 7 days, whatever, for me that just completely capped the engagement it was then getting.
Yeah, I think I could do, or probably at some point will do an entire episode just talking about ManyChat because of all of the ups and downs that I hear from not just you, but the dozens of other people that I talk to on a regular basis. Like it is, I don't know that schizophrenic is the right word, but man, it is one day up, one day down in the pits. So I think that's worth digging into deeper one day. I'm curious, like if you could go back in time and talk to yourself before that first 100,000 follower mark, before the first major income that came from the guides, like what would you tell yourself about the journey ahead?
I think I would tell myself to keep showing up and just stick to your core beliefs and your core message and your pure intention every step of the way. Because I think there's been so many points in my journey where I've become distracted or convinced that someone else is doing it better than me. This is more enticing. This is better. They're doing it better. What do they, am I doing this right? And I think how I always make steps forwards is by coming back to that actual me and my actual why of like wanting to show up, wanting to help people, and just authentically sharing that along the way. Um, I also think as well, it is hard because as I'm sure you can relate from speaking to other people, it is so different. It is such a different landscape out there. It's so much more brutal than when I first started. And I think trying to block out that noise, like I said before, is really important.
Love that. And then, is there anything you feel like people rush that actually just takes time?
I think growth takes time. I think quite a lot of people get very convinced by, I'm sure everyone has seen like those posts which are like, I grew my account from this to this in 30 days. Like, I can't relate to that. Like, mine has all been slow and steady growth. It like across everything, I would say it's been slow and steady. On the contrary to that, I would also say that I think people hold back from launching things and doing things because they wait too long for them to be perfect. And if I go and open like some of my original guides, the workouts are great, but like how it's presented, I cringe so hard. So I think that's where it's like getting out of your own head and being like, oh, this isn't perfect, or what if this isn't right, or whatever. And to be fair, that's one of the things that I really like about the membership site and everything that we've created is it's so easy to just show up authentically. Like a lot of my videos, I haven't got bells and whistles on them. They're just me doing the workout, and I've been able to do that. So I think, yeah, just not being afraid to wait for things to be perfect before you actually do something.
And then I, I started laughing right when I asked that question because I immediately thought of the conversation you and I had about churn a few months ago when you were like, I just can't get over the fact that I'm losing 20 members a month or whatever it was at the time. And my point to you was, okay, but if we go and look at the number of subscribers that you gain in that month, it's, let's say, 100. I'm just pulling arbitrary numbers. So if you gain 100 and you lose 20 every month, you are gaining 80 subscribers a month. And if you gain 80 subscribers over the next 12 months, how many subscribers is that? What? It's probably close to 1,000, if not more. And then you multiply that out by however much your subscription costs, and you're in a pretty good place. And I think that that to me is one of the things that immediately came to mind. But I'm curious, before we move and start wrapping things up, from working with me, what have been like your what have not I don't want you to like give a testimonial for working with me, but I would be curious like what has been the most helpful, impactful and or eye-opening aspects of being able to hop on a call and do coaching calls with me?
I think I mean, when we first started, let's give everybody some backstory here. When we first got into contact with each other, I was very much ready to like completely stop. I was like, I don't think this is working. I'm done. Like, I want to go back to my simple life with my ebooks on my website. Like, I can't do this. And then my name popped up in your inbox of like, Em's having a meltdown, you need to speak to her. And I think my expectation was so low going into the call because I just thought nothing you're going to say is going to kind of convince me otherwise. Nothing you're going to say is kind of going to undo some of these feelings. And I also felt like I had all the evidence backing me up in terms of what I could see in the back end of, subscribers and churn rates and all those missing pieces. And I think even after that first call, like the complete understanding that you had in terms of how different this is and that gentle explanation to me that this is literally not the same thing at all. Like, you need to drop your expectation that you sell this many guides, which means you should equal this many subscribers straight away. And that like simple fact really stuck with me. I think understanding the data was really, really helpful, and like walking me through, like you were just saying about the churn rate, like stop looking at that on its own. Like you're looking at it in isolation instead of looking at it as part of kind of your bigger picture. I think you were also very good at like calling out to me some of like my own like thought cycles where you'd be like, and we've got a big dip here, like what's happening? And it would be like, oh yeah, I actually just had a panic about everything and just didn't really post much about it. And like you can see it there in the data. So I think that accountability and support was really good. Um, Things around like the emails and like just the onboarding flows and all those bits and pieces was really helpful. Again, not something that I have ever really done. Like I've never been like an emails gal, like I've never really done that. So I think having that understanding of like, you need to be doing that. This is important. Like this isn't about necessarily emailing offers to people. This is about engaging the people you already have. I think has been really helpful. Just everything really, to be honest.
And then as you look toward the future, how do you feel like this is kind of changed your life, and what are you intentionally protecting as you keep growing?
I think I feel very protective of like the community and like the vibe, and I guess my authenticity behind the workouts and everything else. I think I'm only just probably getting to a point now where I'm coming through that like initial scared panic stage and into like the excited growth. Where could we be in 6, 12 months time season? Um, even things like thinking about what if I brought another trainer on board, thinking about how I could serve my original gym audience better. Like I still feel like I've got so much space to grow and so much to still learn. And at times that can feel really overwhelming. But I think what's different about this not being a one-time product is it feels like you are constantly refining it and you're constantly growing it. So every little piece you do every month all keeps adding to this bigger pot, which just gets better and better in terms of content and what you're able to offer them. Um, One of the things that I did towards the end of the last year was actually add like a second community strand. So instead of just having the community within the app, I added a WhatsApp community. I know we've talked about like the cultural differences between WhatsApp, but in the UK, like WhatsApp is big for like chatting with your mates and voice notes and pictures and all those things. And the feedback I've had and the natural testimonials that I get from that, which I then share on stories and socials and stuff. And the vibes in it are just so good. Like there just is such a pure community. So I definitely think one of my goals is to try and foster that even more so in the app. So bringing that even more so within the app itself.
Got it. And then yesterday, I actually threw up a question box on my Instagram story just to see what questions people might have for you and for someone who has nearly 500,000 followers and a successful business. And we can't get to all of them, but this one really stuck out to me, and I just wanted to pose it to you. And the person said, "I know I should sell more, but every time I try, it feels awkward or forced. I don't want to be pushy, but I also need my business to work. How do you fix that?"
I think that when I've tried to consciously sell, and when I've like consciously made, I guess, quite explicit content saying, buy this guide or subscribe to this, I almost feel like those are my worst converting stories. I find that I sell the best when I am just naturally doing it and I'm engaging them and I'm building their trust through all those everyday moments. And then I'm slotting in a very natural call to action when I've got one of the girls balancing on my lap trying to do a workout is performs way better than a really polished Canva graphic that I put on my story, which is way more aesthetically pleasing and informative. So I think almost not thinking as much about how can I sell to them, but more like how can I serve them? How can they get me? How can they engage with me and feel like they're buying into you? Because that's what they're doing at the end of the day. Like people could buy workouts from anybody, like just using me as an example, but they're buying my workouts. They're choosing me. So for them to choose me, they have to buy into you as a person, and you have to be relatable to them. You have to, earn that trust with them. And I think that comes through all the authenticity, all the showing up imperfectly, all of the real stuff, not like the really pretty by this kind of graphics and stuff.
Yeah, I think something you do really well in your Instagram stories is, as somebody who has three children and soon to be four children, like one of the things that I deal with as a parent is like I'm up early. And when it comes time, once I get the kids to bed, I'm like, it's my bedtime. But you do really well in your stories of showing kind of like squeezing the margins of life when you have little ones and you're like, it's been a long day, I've had a sick kid, but I need to move for myself. And so I'm going to go do one of my own workouts, even if it's just 10 minutes movement and I'm in my pajamas for the evening already. Like you sharing those moments, I think makes such a big difference in the tone and the understanding that people have from you. And I think it's Alex Hermosi that says like I'm going to butcher the quote, but he says something about like the people who are great at selling are great at just building a stack of evidence that they are who they say they are and they do what they say they're going to do. And I think you live that on your social feed, which makes it that much easier for you to sell when the time comes. Because I think that's what so many people get wrong is that it's just like, I have this business. Let me go talk about the features that I built that I know people will use. And people don't care about features. They care about how you make them feel and what you're going to do for them. And so if you could say like, I've been this trainer for 2 decades and I've trained 20,000 students and the average person loses 20 pounds and goes from looking like this to go to looking like this. And here's the workout that they've all done on average to achieve those results. And it's going to cost you 10 quid a month. Like that makes such a massive difference versus just talking features and like, oh, you get a private WhatsApp.
Yeah, definitely. I think like ultimately there are loads of people that are in way better shape than me. I can hold my hands up to that. But are there people, that are showing up, like you said, in their pajamas? They've put their kids to bed, like they've got the camera up on one thing, they've got to work out on the next. My workout on Saturday was literally in the playroom. I had like Duplo Lego sticking into my back like the entire time. And like for a long time, I would shy away from sharing those moments because I thought, oh, they're not like, if I compare myself to what other people share online, I'm not in the gym, I'm not in a perfect gym outfit, I don't, my hair isn't done or whatever. Like it's a mess in here. And like the more I leaned into actually like, but this is real. This is real life. This is how I'm actually doing my workout. And I think it just makes it feel a lot less scary. I think ultimately, especially with health and fitness, we massively overcomplicate it. We think we need an hour with, you know, in an amazing gym and all this stuff. And actually, as hard as it sometimes is to hear, so much of us have the tools right where we are right now. It's just about having that support and just actually showing up and just doing something and celebrating 10 minutes instead of thinking, oh, it wasn't an hour though, but it was 10 minutes.
Yeah. And Emily's story is a reminder that growth doesn't necessarily remove uncertainty. It often just creates new versions of it. And so building an audience is one milestone. Turning that momentum into something sustainable is a different thing entirely. And so in future episodes, we'll keep unpacking what actually changes when creators move from attention to alignment to real stability. And if this conversation resonated, you're not behind, you're just asking better questions. So thanks everyone so much for being here. Emily, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next.